Welcome everybody to another episode of Outwired. Did you see I fixed the intro? I actually remembered to do that. It didn't go to black. I didn't have like an awkward silence, anything like that. So actually did my job for 1 week. But super excited to be back here with you. I think this is what, episode number 6, guys, something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. I'm excited to talk about, we're going to talk about some macro and micro trends, kind of the difference between national and local, what you should pay attention to in the national level, what you should pay attention to in the local level, maybe even go into like how we find some of that data, or how you can find some of that data. So we'll have Scott touch on that. And talk a little bit about work campers. Greg brought up that. By the way, Greg, your name is Greg Emmer. You forgot the T on the end.
So I sure did.
I don't know,
oh, look at that.
Need our help spelling your name in the future? Just ask, man. We're here.
Quite possibly. Let me see. I got my driver's license here. I'll set that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Greg's going to talk about work campers and some of the, he's seen some of the struggles of you guys, some of you guys trying to find work campers and, reasons that might be the case this year for a variety of different reasons. So we'll do that. And then we're going to talk about our fun little project and some other things I think that we have on the table maybe to toss in. We'll see where the show goes. But we ran a really cool deep research analysis on how to take $5 and turn it into $1 trillion just through owning campgrounds. So that's a really interesting thing that we'll cover later. But first, guys, what we always do at the beginning of the show, what's an interesting thing you heard or saw or did in the last week that you want to bring up? You want to go first, Scott? Because you were gone last week.
Yeah,
I was gone. I was out in Arizona and, talked to a lot of people in the RV industry. And I think that was probably the most interesting thing that's happened in the last week. I think that would definitely qualify. It was insightful to see where everybody's heads are at. Currently what they're concerned about looking ahead. And just having, a bunch of people from the different parts of the industry together and having some solid, meaningful conversations. But I felt like it was people were listening a little bit, which hasn't always been the case. But no, I felt like people were really listening and really curious about kind of where the industry can go next.
And some takeaways. Do you have any takeaways from it, or?
Yeah, the industry itself is very, very concerned about the tariff situation.
Yeah,
as they should be. Okay. And Brian, you're in Canada. You got the thumb screws on the RV industry, but also having meaningful conversations about how to get more people into RVs. How do you do that? How do you sell people on that lifestyle in a way that they've never really had to do? The people just kind of showed up. Generationally, there's a lot of different things happening, and so that's their challenge. And that was the gist of a lot of the conversations we had. We talked a little bit about the relationship between glamping and RVing, and that was kind of my role. But I don't really see glamping as a big threat, in terms of the individual guest. So we had a lot of conversations about that and how what they need to do to kind of get these younger people into RVs and sell them on the lifestyle, sell them on the reasons, look at the barriers and start addressing them.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking up something from Outwired, just the email we were talking to each other about. I'm not ignoring you, but there's something I was what was it, dock workers and something that I was going to use for mine, but Greg, you're going to go first while I find it.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's as interesting as what Scott got, because that's all really totally relevant right now with what's going on because the tariffs just went into effect. But in the last week or so,
Well,
it is.
so hold on, they did, but they didn't. Like the tariffs are not on the RV industry yet, correct? Like the steel and aluminum went into effect today.
Yes,
Uh,
which is gonna, so not on the final product, right? The car
on
product,
the
not on the
cross-border,
product,
yeah.
but on everything it takes to make them, essentially.
And then
So,
Canada responded with 25% on steel and aluminum today. We don't want to talk about tariffs too deep, but
right.
but the finished product auto tariffs are on hold, as I understand it, till the beginning of April.
Yep.
Okay.
For now, until tomorrow, and then who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting, right?
The interesting thing to me the last week, maybe two, is at least in my state here in Ohio, the governmental entities that are getting involved in the glamping space. So, and they're not completely out of the realm of, like state parks. The national park is kicking it around, but it's something that they don't like. The Cuyahoga Valley National Park has no lodging apart from um, one small campground family who was fortunate enough to buy some land inside the park. They're developing some glamping on it. But the park has no lodging, unlike other national parks that have campgrounds and places you can stay. And I think that's because it's such an urban national park, right? You can drive outside the park and get a hotel room, but that's not really what people want to do. People want to camp in the parks. So there's a conservancy that's looking at adding some glamping, and then Ohio State Parks. I just because I know people in the know with the state, I found out that they're going to develop some glamping on one of their properties, a state park property down along the Ohio River. Beautiful place. They've got a state park campground already. The campground's not super popular. I don't know how well it does, but they're leaning into glamping. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Glamping is still strong, and I don't know if that goes along with what you guys see, especially you, Scott, with your research. But it now even the public sector is going to try to make their way in here in Ohio.
Yeah, the glamping with experiences, right? And I want to let you talk about data and then in a second, Scott. But the glamping with experiences, I'm surprised the national parks haven't got more into this in the United States. Canada's national parks actually have. They've put some really cool pods and stuff in some of the national parks, and even the provincial parks and things like that. So, Scott, do you have any data on that?
Well, the national parks aren't, mostly because of budgets. They just don't have the budget for adding on a lot of that stuff. And then, as we talked about before, the reliance on the kind of the rangers, the staff, to provide those experiential things, education and such, has always been part of that national park experience. There are some vendors that do some stuff there, but it's fairly limited. So you don't have it, kind of across the board. Again, it depends on their budgets, but the national parks themselves, bless you. When you go in, there's a lot of times there's a visitor center. Sometimes there's movies. Like you can go see an IMAX movie at Zion, which is kind of weird, I think. But it's probably something that we'll see how the next year shakes out. With these changes, because right now we're more in the contraction mode than we are expansion. So the state parks themselves, individual states, are doing some great things.
That's true. Kentucky, Florida, they have really great.
Yep. There's some of them they have programs. They have anyway. They've developed those, and that's why I think. For locals, especially within the state, that's why the state parks are such a great resource, and they tend to rely a lot on volunteers and people within the communities and such. They can it can be anything from I've at our state parks I've seen a presentation on coyotes to a guy making like an owl with a chainsaw on a log, So it's but they also have like nature walks, nature trails, and stuff like that. There's a lot. So I would encourage people to look at the state parks and look at what they're doing as kind of a model.
And I should be, to be clear, I should say this is not the national park that's doing it. It's the conservancy for the national park. So it's a separate group. I think they're for profit. They operate gift shops and things within the park. they've
Yeah.
gotten a piece of some land, and so it's not the national park. Because anybody out there listening is probably like, how the hell is the national park doing that? They're cutting staff left and right. They are.
Yeah.
The national park is hurting really bad, but I think the Conservancy is going to be able to move forward with this.
Okay, cool. So here's mine because, like, obviously, it's me, and I have to bring something crazy into the discussion, also because it's Outwired. While you guys are the two responsible people, this is what I came across. So I was I was watching a video about dock workers. It wasn't intentionally about dock workers, but they were mentioned in an AI automation video. And what they were talking about is, and I don't know if this is the whole United States. I didn't have a chance to look this up, but there was I guess in the last week, there was a dock workers union that signed a new contract to get their pay raise and all that kind of stuff. And I can't, I don't, I'm sorry, I just don't know whether it was Port or nationwide. But either way, it's not the discussion we want to have. But generally speaking, what was in that contract was that some of the workers were getting paid an average of $200,000 a year to work down at the docks, which is a tremendous raise from where they were before. And they, for the next 5 years in their contract, got automation completely outlawed. And it's relatively easy to, like, not completely, but like we're a year or two away from like being able to automate most of the things in docks, I think. Again, I'm not a logistics guy, but it's interesting that they were able to get that in. And so what my takeaway from that was, and this is going to sound, well, everything that comes out of my mouth sounds crazy, so I don't even need to preface that anymore, does it? Do I? But I started wondering, like, what is the point? Because if you look at dock workers, the amount of wage that dock workers make controls a lot of the increase in price of the goods that come through the ports. Not all, not even most, but some. And having every dock worker make a significant amount of money, which they're probably worth, to be clear, but at $200,000 a year, I think that will lead to some inflation because people who have their goods go through that port will have to, in some way, compensate for that, whether that's the shippers or the receivers or the people who own the dock or whatever else, right? Does that make, am I following trending economic sense-wise? Does that make sense? I'm just making sure.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I can follow. Yeah.
So what I'm wondering is at what point, especially if we're going into a recession, economic downturn, money's tight, whatever else, and nobody's saying that we for sure are yet. I have my own opinions, but at what point do the people turn on the dock workers? And I'm not saying it's imminent, right? And I'm not even saying like it's going to happen in 5 years. But at what point do robots and automation become so widely available that people realize that by adding robots and automations to a place like a dock in place of workers, like right now, everybody has empathy for the workers, right? And so do I. Like, I don't want anybody to lose their job. I want them to be able to take care of their family, all that kind of stuff. Is there a point where that flips, though, to the point where the public realizes that the shit I order could be 90% cheaper if robots packed and shipped it into the cargo containers versus the humans for $200,000 a year? Is there a point where the mindset of society flips in some capacity and they're like, get out of here, humans? Like, we want our goods to be cheaper?
I think that's interesting, but I feel like just as a species, we're more likely to empathize with one another, right? Like you said, people are going to empathize with the dock workers.
But when we're going into an economic crisis and you can't afford stuff anymore, right? Then it becomes a...
Well, but if all those dock workers lose their jobs and you have mass layoffs, and because I don't know how many people there are, but let's say it's a lot. Then demand, I don't know. How does that affect the prices if nobody's buying anything anymore because they're all out of work?
I don't know. Like, I think it's nobody knows, right? But I think we're headed toward deflationary costs of everything when robots start making it. Period, right?
I think this is a more a Scott question. I should stop talking because I'm getting outside of what I can actually answer.
No, that's great. I mean, my view is that it will take quite a bit for people to get to that point, Brian. I feel pretty strongly that connection between the two is it takes quite a bit for that to take effect. But as someone who grew up in the state of Michigan during, there was a time when there was some resentment toward the auto workers because they had really good union contracts.
Yeah.
And then at that time, especially because during the oil embargo, the price of gas going up, and then the imports from Japan especially were coming in really good gas mileage. They were cheaper cars and they lasted longer. So there was some blowback at that time toward the workers, feeling that they were being paid a lot more than, I'm not going to say deserve or anything. I mean,
Well, that was the opinion of the people, right? Not your opinion.
But yeah, there was some resentment there that they made really good money, and the cars were more expensive, and they weren't built as good. So it is something that can happen. It can. It takes a pretty major thing, and maybe it is that economic.
And I'm with you. Like, I think it's going to take a while. Like, I think maybe 10 years. Like, it depends on how fast robots actually scale up. But here's the reason why I think it could happen, because I read another article about the National Park Service and the other people that are being laid off, federal employees, who are going home to their families, who are supporters of government job cuts, and they're losing their job, and their families are cheering this stuff on. And it's just a really interesting dynamic, right? I'm not coming down on either side of it. I'm just saying that is happening in some families. And so that's like, if your family can, like, nobody's saying their family is like, haha, you lost your job, right? We're not saying that. But it's an interesting dynamic that like sort of plays to that, I think. So it could happen. And then the other crazy thing that just to throw in real quick was, have you seen the Severance show, Scott? I know, Greg, you said you didn't watch it.
Mm-mm.
I've seen the first few episodes of the first season.
Okay, it gets much better after the first few episodes, Scott, so go back to it. It took me like 2 or 3 times to get through those first episodes, but it gets really interesting after that. Anyway, so the premise of the show, Greg, super quick for you who haven't seen it. I don't know, is it in the future? It must be in the future, right?
Yeah.
A little bit in the future. But it's about a bunch of workers, and they figure out this brain protocol, like this company does, where they can basically split their conscience into 2. So when they go into work, they're a different person and they don't remember their outside life. And then when they get out of work, they go up like an elevator, and then another consciousness like turns on, and they're back to their out, like they call them innies and outies. So it's really interesting, like from a work, like, anyway, there's a whole like societal story behind it, but that doesn't matter. So I was thinking, like, if we get to the point where, and there's a whole controversy in the show that I won't spoil, but like about how, like, do the innie people have rights? Are they a separate person? Like all that kind of stuff, right? Can they die because they're different people with different life experiences that don't remember anything? Like, and is that murder? So it's really interesting. But I was thinking, like, as we develop these digital personas, as we begin to have AIs that can act like us, sound like us, talk like us, have our memories, take actions on our behalf, go to Zoom meetings, maybe do podcasts, whatever else, right? Is there a point where that becomes a concern of shutting one of those AIs down that's had experiences that you've never had, that's evolved? Like, we're not close to that now, but like maybe 5 to 10 years from now, like, are they basically the equivalent of a severed worker? Anybody want to touch that?
Interesting.
I mean, that's existential, like, societal change, and it will go to the fact of, like, are robots conscious, and should they have rights one day? And nobody knows the answers to that stuff, right? But it's interesting to me to think about. We don't have to talk about it for too long, but okay. So those 2 things. So let's go to macro and micro data trends. I want to, in honor of Scott, our data expert, we actually don't have a featured bird this week because Greg requested it. Finally, after 5 weeks of featured birds, we got Greg to admit that no one gives a shit except him. He actually said that in an email. No one cares.
Definitely
so
not.
we may bring it back from time to time, but we don't have a featured bird this week. Instead, we have a new segment called Data Talk. Here we go, Lisa. Go ahead.
Breaking news. Numbers exist, and some people have too many opinions about them.
Look at that nerd with a pie chart in hand, analyzing trends like he runs the land. He says Q4's looking strong with a 2% bump, but nobody cares, dude. Just go to brunch. Data talk. Stat. Here's a 90-page deck on why sales went flat. Graph. Chart. Let me tell you about the trends in artisanal Pop-Tarts. They got Excel sheets with 500 tabs, talking standard deviations like it's casual chat. Regression analysis proves I'm right. Cool, but when's the last time you slept at night? Data talk. Click. Let's deep dive why millennials aren't buying bricks. Trend. Plot. Welcome to Data Talk. Prepare to get lost.
Tonight on Data Talk, why people who say synergy should not be allowed in society.
Welcome to Data Talk. Prepare to get lost.
It's
What do you think?
beautiful.
It's a great intro.
It's all for you, Scott.
I'm speechless. It's amazing. It's
Do you
amazing.
use the word synergy?
Do I use it?
Yeah.
Rarely.
Good.
Not anymore.
'Cause we
Only
like
if I
you,
wanna
we like you on the
avoid-
podcast. We'd like you to stay here for a little bit, please. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the show and all that, like that intro, the song, the lyrics, every piece of video clip, 100% AI, all AI generated. So really cool things you can do with AI already. The industry's moving really fast. So, all right, let's dive into macro, micro. Where do you want to start, Scott?
Wow. You know, the leaping off point, I think, on this topic is simply, when people can, if we wanted to even look at it from an economic perspective, like when people say things like inflation's up, is, what does that mean nationwide? Am I paying more for things at a local level? Obviously everyone wants to talk about eggs. That's your, inflation may be rising, egg prices are up, that hits you. So there's your macro, inflation's up.
But
your
you gave a
micro.
good example. Yeah. Like you're going to give, probably going to say it. I should have just let you talk.
But so essentially what I think what we want to talk about today a little bit though is, what are the macro trends? What are the macro ideas? What are the macro the metrics that are being reported out there? And does it affect you? If you're a campground owner, does it affect you? If it does, how? And what can you do about it? And should you do anything about it? And an example here could be that if we say overall, let's just look at the last RV report that came out the other day that said retail sales were in January year over year were down. Retail registrations,
Yeah.
They were down 6 or 7% again.
Mm-hmm.
And so there you have, it's like, okay, overall the industry, registrations are down, but if you own an RV dealership, you may be sitting there going, but that's not affecting me. It's like my
True.
sales are up. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there because you're at the micro level. Your market might be thriving, and where in the pocket that you're at might be doing things might be a little different. However, you should still pay attention to those macro things because it could be lagging in your market. It may be lagging today, but tomorrow it may hit you. And then, so from there, what you need to do is look at what is impacting this. Why are registrations down? Why is that? And how does that affect me? So, if registrations are down because there's lack of interest, that people are changing their behavior, you should probably pay attention to that. Even if your sales are up, you should probably pay attention to that trend because, you may get hit with this later. Maybe it's not happening now, but it will happen.
Yeah.
So
let me ask this: like, if you're like, obviously, we all pay, not all of us, but most of us pay attention to the national news, whether it's CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or whatever website that you're on that you're reading your news. And they all have different stories, but there are common stories and threads that happen on all the news organizations. And it may not be RV shipments, but it's inflation or egg prices or things like that. So if I am, our audience, RV park owners, RV dealers, stuff like that, if I'm somebody in the outdoor hospitality industry, how do I look at something that's macro and determine if I need to pay attention to it from a micro level?
Um, it my view on that would be, for example, if you're an owner or manager of a campground or an RV dealer, is what are the changing trends in, say, demographics? Like demographically, you might be seeing this trend. That it's younger. It's a different generation. If or there might be changes in ethnicity. It could be household income. There could be a lot of these demographic changes that are happening nationally. So you now at your level, your micro level, needs to understand who that person is, fully understanding that your demographics are changing. Like, what does the younger person want? What are their behaviors? What are their how do they make decisions? What are their communications channels?
But so I don't want to interrupt you, but let me start at the macro trend level because like lots of news comes out, right?
Yep.
How do I, as an owner, know I need to research that more or I can push that to the side? Because there's a ton of noise and there's so little time in a campground owner or RV dealer's life for further research and deduction. Some of it is necessary, some of it can be pushed to the side. So is there an easy way? I feel like the answer is no, but I'm asking you because you're the expert. Is there an easy way to say, like, maybe that impacts me, I should look at it closer?
I think what the solution there is that you need to do your own research. Maybe use AI to feed in a couple prompts and ask, describe your business. Here's my business. Here's the national trend. How could this impact me? I mean, you should ask yourself that question and try to answer it yourself anyway, because you know your business better than anyone. But that's one approach, right? I think that's at everyone's fingertips right now.
I'm going to go keep talking and like talk about some macro or micro data trends and some of the other ways that you can spot importance. I'm going to actually look up the RV business article and see if I can get it to spit out something.
Okay. I mean, Greg, as someone involved directly with campgrounds, I mean, what's your process? How do you approach that?
Well, so I think it's really interesting what you just pointed out. The owner, the operator, the manager, your business better than anyone, right? But because of that, you've also got all your own biases. So you've got these giant blind spots about your business. And so your idea of using AI or, you can also, if you don't want to type a prompt, maybe you go to your state owners association meeting. I was just at the Ohio meeting and you bounce things off people there and you see what they're feeling from different parts of the state. But that's typically my process is probably more anecdata than actual data, because it is a lot of that. It's a lot of surveying campground owners and getting their feedback directly from them. But I always wonder what those blind spots are, what they can see, what they can't, because they have their own feeling about their property and they're never going to see it like someone, with third-party perspective, that's a lot of times why they hire us at Camp Strategy, right? We bring that third-party perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But half the time, man, I'm not going to lie, I end up wondering do I have it right? Because the data, to your point, it skews so differently if it's macro or micro. You gave a great example about eggs, right? You were in Phoenix and they were how much?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get you to say.
Oh, yeah. They're like $10 a dozen.
Right. And I believe the comment was for really not great eggs.
Not very good. Right.
Not very good eggs. But you can go down the street because you live in a rural area. You can find somebody locally that'll sell you like free range eggs for $5, $6?
Or less. There's someone here that does it's $4.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Man, I need to come see you. Those are we're not seeing that here, but even still, like, I can do the same thing. I can find a local hobby farm or a local farmer who's got a little like honesty box at the end of their driveway, and I can drop $6 and I can get a dozen eggs free range and bring them home. Maybe I got to clean them up, but that doesn't bother me. I'd rather have that for good eggs than $10 for the grocery store eggs that you wonder how far they got shipped and how long they sat around. And so yeah, I'll even find myself wondering, am I getting this right? Because
Well, let's look at. Go ahead, finish, please. I'm sorry.
no, that's it. It just what are my blind spots? What am I missing out on? Because I see the macro and I see the micro, and it ends up being this, not like a negative feedback loop, but it just, okay, I see this, I feel this way, but then I read this, I feel another way, and it feels like I'm going in circles half the time.
Well, like you post in the Facebook group, or I post on LinkedIn, right? And then like everybody says, well, I'm up. My park's up for the first few months of 2025.
And most of my clients are right now. They're
Same
year
here,
over year,
right?
their reservations are up.
Yep, same here. I'm seeing that too. I'm just worried about the other trends that I'm seeing. So we'll see. Like, I hope I'm wrong. But anyway, let's look at this. Lisa, do you want to click the button here? Okay. And then can we just, make it bigger? All right. So I put this in the prompt. I read this article the other day, and the data is from a national level. How do I know if this is going to impact me if I have a campground and just made up Michigan? Macro versus micro data. What do I pay attention to? How do I know if these things are important to me? And so it said, understanding how national trends impact your Michigan campground involves analyzing both macro level data, national statistics, and micro level data, local or state specific information. Here's how you can approach this. Macro level data. The RV industry has experienced fluctuations in recent years. For instance, total RV registrations in 2024 were 356,518 units, a 6.9% decrease from 2023. This decline indicates a potential softening in the RV market nationwide. And the micro level data is focusing on Michigan. The RVDA, Recreational Vehicle Dealers Industry, RV, is that a thing? Is RVD? Oh. I was thinking it was giving an acronym. Sorry. I was like, that's not RVIA. What am I reading? It's projected to grow to $1.9 billion over the 5 years leading up to 2025, which is now. This growth suggests a robust local market for RVs, which could positively influence campground occupancy rates. I don't know how accurate that is. Now, with everything changing, I want to hear your opinion on that in a second, Scott. Additionally, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources announced fee increases for state park campsites and overnight lodging effective August 1st, 2025. Modern and semi-modern campsites will see nightly rate increases between $4 and $10 depending on location and amenities. These adjustments aim to enhance visitor experiences. So implications for your campground: competitive pricing. With state parks increasing their fees, your campground may become more attractive if you maintain or adjust your rates competitively. Market positioning: emphasize unique amenities or services that differentiate your campground from state parks to attract campers seeking alternatives. And monitor local demand. Keep an eye out on local RV sales and camping trends to anticipate changes in demand and adjust your marketing strategies accordingly. So I want to hear your thoughts on that data, but that feels like good advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think, Scott?
I think it's a little optimistic at this point, in terms of the growth, overall, and especially looking forward. I think it's, especially given where we're sitting right now, because like interest rates and the cost of making an RV is going to go up. It's the notices have already gone out. It's going to happen. So
by potentially like up to 50% if the parts are crossing the border.
Yeah. So it's going to be a substantial increase in the cost. So it's going to suppress the market a bit. And that, again, macro versus micro, when you're looking at your local dealership, you may want to make an adjustment on the type of RV that you're selling. I'm just throwing that out. I'm saying it's like, but that may be something that you do. And at a campground, you may need to prepare for more people showing up to camp in tents, and that maybe they want cabins, or they're going to be in smaller RVs.
But also, the price of tents goes up too from the aluminum and the poles. Like not much, but like still, like in a down economy, like $5-10 is a lot of money for some people.
Yeah, I think because of the lower entry point overall, the tent
not going to have as big of an impact. You're right. Yeah.
But
some.
But I do think that people will buy smaller RVs. I think that's coming. I mean, right I mean, right now people tend to buy a little bit smaller anyway. Was it like 60% of the RV market is units under $25,000? So it's it's already skewed that direction, and I think this will do that even more. So when you think of that local market stuff, I don't, everything being equal, I don't think that it's that optimistic even for the state of Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that assessment, but it's still an example of how you can find that stuff to pay attention to, right? And it doesn't mean that like just by using ChatGPT, that is your answer, as we just talked about. It doesn't mean your research is done, but if you're a busy campground owner, like this is way better to like ask the question and have this extra paragraph of data than it is to not have it and either think completely negatively or think completely positively or think the wrong way, period, whatever that way may be.
And you can add a follow-up question to it too, about recent events and how that will impact them.
Yeah, I talked to Scott Barr. He's totally negative and a Debbie Downer, and I just think that you're wrong, ChatGPT. No, um, but so like outside of the economy, though, like this is a whole further trend besides just financials and tariffs and the RV industry's shipments being up or down and the inventory being up or down and the registrations and all that stuff. It's a broader picture of like, how do I look at behavior flows and whether people are staying closer to home or traveling farther away or going to the national parks, like we had that conversation a few weeks ago, or not. And so all of this is going to require some level of research and reporting. And I think that's where I hope, Scott, you and I, we've talked about this, but I think we'll try to double down on this now with some of this. It's more important than ever to have this data, but work on something like a state, regional level reporting structure that we've talked about, but figuring out ways that we can do deep dives into that stuff and provide some information that it just doesn't exist out there. And we know how to do it, like with your eyes on it and other people in the industry, we know how to do it very well with our advanced AI models now, to where it just wasn't cost feasible to provide before. Like there's just no way that you could do it and make it free to everybody from a feasibility or from a just making it feasible. And I think now it is, even if it's not as good as human creation for, $100,000 or whatever it might cost, or $50,000. As you've said multiple times, and we talked about on the show, it's 95% accurate, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's just a need for people to get some of that more data into their hands. That's like, some people will research. Most people won't. And it's not because they don't want to. Some of it is, but some of it is they don't have the time. Some of it is they don't have the resources. Some of it is they don't know how to use ChatGPT. Some of it is for whatever, pick your reason, right? So how else can you kind of discern, like, are there any red flags that you can kind of point to people and say, like, you definitely should pay attention to something like this? Because we've been hearing about inflation for 2 years, for example, right? And inflation has impacted camping and campground attendance and all that, but not to the point where it appears like it's going to do it this year. So how do I know that now is the time to pay attention to the inflation is up, even though inflation is down to 2.8% or whatever came out today or yesterday? The market is all happy about, where it was up 6% or whatever the number was 2 years ago, but like people were still camping and everything was fine. So like that's the point where I'm trying to, is there any advice we can give to owners to say, like, this is something that at this point you should pay attention to?
From my perspective, there's two factors at play. There's the economic factor, and then there's kind of the external environment factor. And so what you have is, sometimes even if the economy's down a little bit, people will still come out and camp. It's a less expensive way to travel and to stay and vacation. We know that. We've seen it. We've tracked it throughout the years.
Yeah.
When you have an overlay of, I always call it like national stress, but anxiety. We had it last year with the election. We're having it right now with, what's the economy going to do? What's the effect of these tariffs? All the shutdown, the layoffs, all that kind of stuff. Those overlays. I was talking to someone about this earlier. It's like the stock market hates uncertainty,
Yeah.
and so
The
do
VIX index.
yeah, and so do people. To people, it's a little different, but when there's uncertainty, they stay home, and that to me is, um, it becomes a challenge how to get these people to come back out, because that's where your marketing and your messaging and everything comes in. It's like they're feeling stressed and they're going to want to stay home. When the stress and the anxiety gets a little bit too high, that's what I would watch more than anything. You know, it's
Consumer confidence.
yeah, we need people to feel good. You know, it's kind of like, back in the day during the Depression, they always say the best thing that FDR did was he did his fireside chat and told everybody things are going to be great. We got this. Put your money back in the banks. You're all set. And him instilling that confidence back in the consumer market is what helped, kickstart things again. So that's what we need. We need people to feel good about going out. We need them to feel good and confident about being able to show up and stay at campgrounds. And it may be that there's a big opportunity for private campgrounds here to kind of step up and say, we're the resource for you. This is it. Come out here. We're going to relax. You're going to do things. You're going to forget about all that other stuff. You're going to forget about it for a weekend.
And I think that's great. I think there is an opportunity, but again, you've got to be able to see both the macro and micro level to understand when to take advantage of that through your marketing or other channels, right? I did look up the Consumer Confidence Index. I know it plummeted last month, but it was last released in February 2025. It declined by 7 points to 98.3, marking the largest monthly drop since August of 2021. This decrease was driven by consumers' growing pessimism about future business conditions and employment prospects. The Expectations Index, which reflects consumers' short-term outlook, fell to 72.9, dipping below the 80-point threshold that often signals an impending recession. So, I mean, there's your answer. Like, pay attention. Like what Scott, you're saying, pay attention. If, obviously to all economic factors, but if you have a limited, narrow window, maybe pick something like consumer confidence.
I think the consumer confidence, to me, it's the easiest to understand, and
Yeah.
but it's emotional. It's an emotional measurement. It's like, and that's what drives behavior.
How do they calculate it for people who don't know?
I don't know all the metrics that go into consumer confidence.
We'll find out.
You're going to find out right now, aren't you?
Yeah, we're going to find out right now. Because I'm not sure that I know. The U.S. Consumer Confidence Index, published monthly by the Conference Board, is calculated using data collected through a monthly household survey. Here's how the calculation works. Approximately 3,000 households across the U.S. are surveyed each month. Respondents answer questions about current and future economic conditions, employment availability, current and future, personal financial situations, plans to purchase durable goods, cars, appliances, and homes. The survey specifically targets two major areas: the Present Situation Index, current conditions, and the Expectations Index, which is the short-term outlook in the next 6 months. The scoring system is responses are categorized into 3 types: positive, good, neutral, normal, and negative, bad. The formula used for each question is typically whatever that math problem is. Index component equals, I don't know, if it's not worth putting it up on the screen, positive responses over positive responses plus negative responses times 100, whatever data Scott person knows what that means. This gives a measure called relative value, ignoring neutral responses. And then these individual measures, e.g. business conditions, employment, income expectations, are combined into 2 major sub-indices: Present Situation Index, Expectations Index. Each has multiple survey questions averaged together, and the overall Consumer Confidence Index is calculated using weighted averages, 40% Present Situation Index and 60% Expectations Index. And you interpreting the index, above 100 indicates optimism, below 100 signals increasing caution or pessimism. And why it matters to your business: the Consumer Confidence Index helps businesses predict consumer spending behaviors important for discretionary purchases, including RV travel and campground visits, because I did it in the same conversation window as the Michigan thing. A decline like the recent drop to 98.3 suggests consumers are becoming more cautious, potentially impacting demand for leisure and recreational spending. Monitoring this index helps you anticipate changes in consumer demand and adjust your strategy accordingly. So there you go. Learn something new every day.
There you have it.
What else should they pay attention to besides consumer confidence, Scott?
There's you can do a quick search, a Google search too, on the travel price index too. That one's a little bit more simple. It uses gas price, like 3 metrics: gas prices, and I think I forget the 3, to be honest with you.
Isn't it gas, hotels, and airlines or something like that? It's
something like that, and airfare.
Yeah, major. Yeah. Yep.
The travel price index, and I ask it to make me understand like I'm a 7th grader because I'm not as smart as Scott. The travel price index is like a special thermometer that measures how the prices of things related to traveling change over time. Think about things like hotel rooms, airplane tickets, gasoline, rental cars, and even campground fees. Anything you spend money on while you're traveling. TPI is how TPI is calculated. Imagine you take a big shopping cart and fill it with everything you buy during a vacation. For example, hotel rooms, food and drinks, gasoline, airline tickets, rental cars, tickets for parks or attractions. Next, experts do 3 easy steps. They first pick a base year. They choose 1 year as the starting point. Let's call it the base year. And they give this year an index value of 100. Then they check the prices every month. Every month, the experts look into how the prices of those vacation items change compared to the prices from the base year. Then they calculate the index. If prices go up compared to the base year, the TPI goes higher than 100. And if prices go down, the TPI goes below 100. For example, a TPI of 105 means travel costs went up by 5% from the base year, and 95 means they are 5% cheaper than the base year.
So with that, now thinking about the travel price index and how, okay, this is a macro thing, but should you pay attention to it and why? I think you should. And I would say if you are a campground owner operator, that if this goes up, plan on more local travel. Plan on more people in your area. They're not gonna travel as far. They don't want to pay as much. They're less likely to fly. In some instances, if this metric goes up a decent amount, camping, glamping will increase, because this affects that person who has a lot out of pocket to travel. Again, especially the longer distance travelers. So if in your area, thinking about your marketing, thinking about local marketing, travel price index goes up, hit the local market, because people aren't gonna, they're not gonna fly, and hotel prices and stay in hotels. It's like, run a promotion. I think that one helps a lot.
It says, I ask it to give me 1 paragraph, apply it to a campground owner, key takeaways locally in 1 paragraph. As a campground owner, paying attention to the TPI helps you understand if the overall cost of travel, we talked about that. If the TPI is high, it means traveling is becoming more expensive, and you might notice fewer guests, shorter stays, or visitors looking for budget-friendly alternatives, prompting you to consider, as you said, promotions, discounts, or adding value to attract guests. Conversely, if the TPI drops, indicating cheaper costs, your campground might benefit from increased visitor traffic, giving you an opportunity to maintain or slightly increase your pricing. Always monitor local travel costs closely, especially gas prices and regional lodging rates, to adapt your marketing strategy and pricing competitively.
And there you have it.
Greg, thoughts? Campground owner, Greg? Or consultant, Greg?
I don't know that I have any thoughts.
Well, okay, so let's take this from a Greg consulting standpoint, right?
Yeah.
If a campground comes to you and says, listen, Greg, I'm concerned about the economy. I want to, like you did a feasibility study for me a few years ago. I kind of want to revisit this and see how do I pay attention to this? What do I care? So how do you advise your clients in that situation?
Yeah, and the whole time Scott's talking, I'm sitting here thinking about it. And we've definitely touched on this a little bit. My experience was that I was close to metro areas, so I saw the addresses on the registrations getting closer and closer to my park. They were the lot more from in my zip code and surrounding zip codes, and a lot fewer from farther away. So, if you are that park, if you can be a destination park, if you can be, everybody just go out tomorrow, switch over to being a destination park, get near a population center, just pick your place up and move it. if you are one of those type of parks, if you are, why am I still doing that? If you are within a couple of hours of a major metropolitan area, try to siphon those people off. They're not going to want to go as far. If you're one of those parks that's, in, I think I mentioned on another show, Holstein, Iowa, and you're just, you're a jumping off point as East Coasters are trying to get to Yellowstone and Glacier and the Black Hills, you're going to have a tough year potentially. You still are going to want to change your marketing. Maybe you're going to try different specials, discounts, but how do you get those folks off the East Coast to spend the money on the fuel, take the time to travel all the way out to Yellowstone? That's a lot tougher sell. So, certainly geographically and physically limited that way. And in those cases, you may just buckle up and decide to run things a little more austere and hope that people do get off their backsides and make that trip across the country. Because what other choice do you have? But if you are one of those parks, helicopter. Yeah, right. You could always start heli tours.
Invest in your business. You got to spend money to make money. That's
right. Absolutely. Yeah. Go get a second, third, and fourth mortgage to pay for that helicopter pilot fuel and insurance, and start flying them out there.
It's all about the experiences we've talked about.
It is, and that is experiential hospitality. Let me tell you, you start flying people out in a helicopter.
It's a win-win. We should do it. You should do a report on that, Scott.
I'm on it.
All right. But yeah, like it is going like. And for the same reasons that we talked about national parks, right? I'm very concerned about those places along the road to national parks, too. We did the numbers between 30 and 60 minutes of the national parks. I think is what we ran on the show a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are the same people, same kind of parks that suffered during the pandemic because yes, everybody was camping, and yes, that was the only thing you could do, right? You can get outside, and the greatest. Everybody was buying kayaks and bicycles and tents and RVs, and everybody was going camping because you could do it. But they were staying closer to home because everything was really expensive. Yeah. And people didn't want to be, 20 hours from home if the pandemic hopped to another level or something crazy happened. So they stayed closer to home. So while a lot of park owners, it's often talked about that like the pandemic was this boom for camping, and it was. But not for everybody. There are a lot of park owners out there that really suffered through it, and they're the same type of parks that will likely experience the downturn more if we have one now. They're gonna feel it more than the local parks. At least that's the way I see it. Scott, would you say your data bears that out as well?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. It's like what you're located. All these things. I mean, what I try to do is look at some of these indices, and then kind of bump those up against some real behavioral data. For example, I did an analysis of national park visitation since 1960, and looked at each election year to see what happened. So I looked at those to see what the impact typically is in an election year, so you can see what happened the year before, the year after, and it was real that in most election years, national park visitation was up, and I think we saw that last year. I think national park visitation was up substantially. So it kind of played out, and you get a campground can do the same thing. You could take travel price index and look it up and get maybe some monthly figures or something like that, and then look at your registrations on and kind of
correlate them.
Just literally look at the two and see, are they related, and if so, by how much. It's actually a fairly just a little, you could do a little spreadsheet, put the two together, and just see, as the TPI goes up, do you go up or down? As consumer confidence goes up or down, what happens to you? And I know a lot of people don't have a lot of time for that, and there's a reason Brian did that intro to Data Talk, because it's easy to get needs on it, and to maybe in some cases oversimplify it. But that's something you could do, and that's something that almost anyone could do, just with you don't even have to have a spreadsheet. You could write it down. Look at a few extremes. Just write them down. Here's what what was my year-over-year change and what was going on now. Now you're going to be able to really identify if these macro trends and results impact you at a local level.
Okay,
That's
cool. Let's switch.
Sorry about that. That may have been a little much.
No, that's a great idea, man. And if you need that report, you call Scott Barr. He can run that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I've heard, if you want to give out your address, like I think you can just, if you just send an anonymous check to the address you're about to hear, a report will just appear.
It's magic.
And that's how, yeah. So if you don't have the time to research it, that's the it's somewhere in Maine. So just,
that is a fantastic idea. Why not go back through your historical registrations? You got historical data on the TPI and the consumer confidence. What are they doing? Are they moving together? Are they moving away from each other? It's a great idea, Scott.
And if you don't have time, take it and put it into AI. Like, we don't have an example to show you, but like you can upload an Excel spreadsheet or a report to any of these AI models, and you can say, like, here's an image of the chart of my reservations and how they've waxed and waned or whatever over the last 2, 3, 4 years. And then here, I want you to compare that to the historical TPI over the same period and let it go to town.
It's a great idea.
So, okay, let's, do we want to switch to work campers?
Sure.
All right. So, I'm going to step away for 1 second while you talk about this, Greg, but just set the stage for why you wanted us to talk about work campers today. And I'll be back and we can share some of the data I pulled and some other things.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. So it's it's always a struggle for campgrounds to find staff unless you are near one of those major population centers or you're an in-town type campground. If you're out in a rural area, it's tough. Your labor pool is small. And so I just thought it would be interesting to talk about this because it's one thing that tech can't totally solve for. You can have all the AI automations you want. You still need somebody to clean fire pits and you still need somebody to answer the phones. Well, mostly. Okay, so the AI can solve for that. But it just seems to be, it's getting harder and harder to find work campers. At least my experience talking to my clients. And it seems to be this year, for some reason, it's even accelerated. And I have my own ideas about that we can get into after Brian shares what he wants. But I wonder, Scott, do you have anything on that? Have you spoken, do owners bring that kind of stuff to you? Do they ask you about the labor market or what they should be paying? Like, do you ever do any studies on that as far as labor at campgrounds or glampgrounds?
We don't get into the weeds too much on it, but we also do take those kinds of questions quite a bit, and so it's a challenge across the board. I mean, I think every campground owner I've ever spoken with says the same thing.
Yeah.
And they do. But you know what I've seen a lot of is the campground owners kind of comparing notes and sharing ideas, best practices, because some people have some creative stuff that's worked, but it's kind of market by market too. Like what
definitely
would work here in Maine probably wouldn't translate, to Ohio, maybe. So.
Yep, absolutely. Very macro versus micro. Look at that. We went full circle. And our fearless leader is back.
What did I miss? Just what I expect. You're talking about the difficulty finding work campers, and
we were actually discussing whether or not the Holy Roman Empire was holy or an empire. We decided neither.
Well, that's interesting. Do you want me to weigh in on that, or should we just talk about work campers?
I think we should probably keep going. I don't ever have good ideas. It's not a good topic to talk about.
Okay. So for work campers, what have you covered real quick? Give me a 10-second summary.
Just about how difficult it can be and how AI can't really solve for somebody being out on the campground. Robots are not out in campgrounds yet. You still need people to do your work. And it seems to be every year it's a struggle, especially if you're not near a city or a town. This year it seems to be extra hard. So
why do you think that is?
I have no idea. I have
educated.
I shouldn't say I have no idea, but I do think that part of the problem is that there is still a mentality around work campers that, somebody should just be grateful to have a campsite and they should work 30 hours a week for that campsite. And that's all they should get. And that's very old school, very old school. It's also probably not legal given labor laws. That's, I mean, you take the cost of your campsite, you put in 30 hours a week, you do that over a month, you're probably not paying a minimum wage. There's all kinds of problems.
That's not even touching the whole contract versus employee debate either.
Correct. Which most work campers do not work. I mean, yeah, okay, I can put that guy, I can make it so that he's a contract worker, not an employee, but then I can't control his schedule. Because you can't make a schedule for those contract workers.
Or exactly what he does or how he does it, or like, so it's never a good idea to have a work camper as a contractor.
It is not. In fact, if anybody's listening, if there's one thing I can tell you flat out, without a doubt, you need to put them on your payroll and you need to be paying them something for the hours they work. A straight trade where they are not getting paid and they are not in payroll and you are not paying workers' comp for them if they don't get hurt. Please don't do that. Please put them on payroll, pay them something, be paying into workers' comp. If something happens
Channeling
to that
like
employee,
Christine Taylor, like just grimacing at the screen as we talk about this right now.
Yeah, no, she knows. I think she'd be down with this. I think she'd be all right with it because we're telling these people do the right thing.
Grimacing at the people who like do this still.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. I hear the hounds of Bar going off in the background. I love it. I think that's what I hear. Do I hear the hounds, Scott?
Yeah, that's why I muted my mic for a second. Yes.
That's too bad. That's okay. That's probably the most interesting thing that anybody hears on this show every week is Scott's dogs barking. That's my guess anyway.
That's why they didn't watch last week. They came on, they were like,
that's right. So pay them, get them on your payroll. But I think the other part of the problem is, and Brian, you take it away, based on what people do want to pay, if they are paying out above the site rent, it's probably still not worth someone's time to come to your place and camp if you're not. You're asking them to work pretty hard in most cases, cleaning toilets, shoveling fire pits, doing all the things you do around a campground. It's not easy work. If you want them to work hard, you need to pay them well. So Brian, talk a little bit about what you saw this week as far as the dollar amounts.
Yeah, I mean, I think before I get to that, just briefly, I think like this is important regardless of whether it's a work camper or a worker, is this wage that we'll talk about, right? And there's, I recognize this is going to be controversial. I'll probably get some hate mail after this, right?
I will too. Yeah, no doubt.
But guys, you got to think about what is a living wage for you. And years ago, I did this exercise with my parents, with my mother specifically, who is still probably irritated with me if I bring this topic up to her. They used to own a couple Subways in upstate New York. And they were complaining about, and this is years ago, this is probably 10, 12 years ago, right? But at the time they were talking about like paying people $9.50, $10 an hour and how that was just too much money and they couldn't afford the food and all the things. And I said to my mom, I was like, Mom, can you live on $10 an hour? No. Well, why do you think your employees can then? And that's the disconnect, right? Is people like don't think about that. And I recognize that this is a broader topic. You know, there's lots of nuance here. Yes, I understand your expenses are going up and it's hard to raise rates. And like, it's the same reason it was hard for my parents to raise the price of the footlong sub, you know, even 20, 30 cents. That impacts how people will go and where they choose to eat and even what Subway they go to, right? If they're the only people doing it. So there's lots of thought that goes into this, but you have to start at that base level of like, you've got to be willing to pay people a living wage and understanding what that is in your area. And so what I saw in one of the Facebook groups after you had proposed this, and I think it was actually posted in the group before you posted it. We're not going to share the actual post for the privacy of the person and all that kind of stuff. But was, you know, I'm having trouble finding work campers this year, the common theme that you're talking about, Greg. And I don't understand why. It's just a real struggle. And so then the comment thread, that was all the post was. And then the comment thread underneath that from the other owners in the group went down into the fact of, well, how much are you offering for the job? And the guy said, well, we're willing to pay for their entire site and all their utilities and $900 a month. And one of the people underneath that said, well, like, I can tell you right now, like, I'm not even looking at your job because I currently am a work camper and I make 3 times that plus my site, plus my utilities. And so I think there's just, again, I'm not saying that everybody is coming in at $900. We're not saying that we're lumping people into that. We're not judging anybody specifically, but there are people out here. I don't know whether it's a lot or a little. Maybe you have a better sense of that, Greg. But like, this is happening out there, and you guys need to understand this. So let's share my screen real quick, Lisa. So we took this into ChatGPT Pro, and you can see my conversation earlier. Do goats eat grass? That was on the MC Fireside Chats, Greg. I know we have a little on-off thing about goats, but so I put this in here. I said, I'm having discussion on a podcast later about work campers, the type of people campground owners would recruit to work on their property, typically in exchange for trading an RV site, perhaps paying their utilities, and a monthly fee that is supposed to be a living wage. Often these owners don't take into account things like cost of living, inflation, the M2 money supply, which is the printing of money. We've talked about that before, that is increasing and thus decreasing the purchasing power of the US dollar. Start with what year it would make sense to trade an RV site, assuming it is $700 a month in value, which Greg, you said is a little bit low.
It could be. It depends on where you're at, but it's still a fair number for a smaller park, especially.
Okay. The utilities for that site and a $900 a month wage, just based on the Facebook post. We're looking for what year that would have been and why, accounting for all of the above. Then walk us through each subsequent year, accounting for all of the above, and share how that wage growth would need to be at a minimum to keep up with the cost of living. So it thought, this is like one of the really expensive thinking models, it thought for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And this is what, like, we'll skim this. We're not going to read the whole thing, but for the benefit of the podcast people, below is a way to think about the question of when it would have been reasonable to work at a campground for an RV site valued at $700 a month, sites utilities plus a $900 a month cash wage, and how the arrangement would need to keep pace with inflation and cost of living growth over subsequent years. So understanding the total compensation package, and Scott, please weigh in on this if you want to say like our data is high or low or anything. Same with you, Greg, because this is your conversation. RV site is a $700 a month value. Utilities, we're assuming these might be worth $50 to $100 a month, but we'll just treat them as part of the site's overall value. Some owners say utilities included, others only cover partial. For simplicity, let's keep the site at a flat $700 now. Cash wage is $900 a month. This yields a total compensation of roughly $1,600 a month if you consider the $700 site as in-kind payment, or $19,200 per year. So already your annual wage of $19,200 to me looks suspect. What do you guys think?
That's poverty level, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So now, like, obviously, I can hear it already in the hate mail that I'll receive. Is the well, we're not necessarily paying them a living wage because they're retired and they're on Social Security, right? And that is, I think, that's a fair argument, right?
It is definitely fair, even if they're not retired or on Social Security, especially if you're a seasonal campground. Okay, I can't pay you necessarily a living wage. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. So we'll have to run those numbers after this and see what that makes sense for, Greg. I'd like to hear your input on the prompt. So for the purposes of this, though, we're just talking about a living wage. So many people look at this arrangement and say that's not enough in 23 or 25. The question is when it would have been closer to a viable living wage. And then it goes through like inflation and the money supply and historical trends. A quick way to do a backward check is to say if I have $1,600 in 2023, that might be worth around $900, give or take, in early 2000s dollars because of roughly 75 to 80% inflation from 2000 to 2023. That means that a total monthly compensation of $1,600 in today's money is similar to about $900 back in 2000, 25 years ago. In 2000, a person making around $900 a month plus a lower valued RV site might still have been pretty tight on money, but in many lower cost of living areas that could be borderline feasible. In 2005 or so, $1,600 in 2023 might be equal to around $1,100 to $1,200. Because living wage is subjective and region specific, most people looking at historical data would say that arrangement feels more in line with a workable deal in the early to mid 2000s than it does in the mid 2020s. So that's, for sake of illustration, let's pick 2003 or so as the year that might feel somewhat more fair. So what do we think about that assessment so far before we go on?
I can't believe the year 2000 is 25 years ago. It's the first thing.
Yeah.
I don't know where the time warp happened, but sure. Yeah. Otherwise, I feel like that. I mean, if the numbers in there are right, this makes perfect sense. And it really illustrates the point. I mean, $900 a month, if you're working 30 hours a week, which is what most owners expect from their work campers in order to earn the site, is like $750 an hour.
Yep.
I think. So,
Maybe.
and that's not accounting for the site. Of course, that's just the 900, but yeah, that's a pittance.
Any thoughts, Scott? Or
No, I agree with Greg. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we have just the year-by-year adjustments. We're not going to go through every year, but just looking at this stuff, inflation cost, it breaks it down year by year. For those of you watching the screen, you can kind of see this, scroll by and pause it if you want to look into more detail. But where it ends up is like if you go all the way down to 2023 and 2024, the new total accounting for inflation should be $2,728 a month. That includes your site.
Which is really interesting. That's really interesting because you just said that the work camper that responded said, I'm making about 3 times that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And this calculation, what started as $1,600 in 2003 to simply keep pace would be closer to $2,700 or $2,800 a month by 2024. If you're still offering a flat $1,600 total in 2024 or 2025, you're effectively paying the same as $950 to $1,000 in 2003 dollars, which most would not call a living wage by modern standards. And then bottom line, and here's the summary soundbite it gave me for the podcast.
Then what do we do all this talking for? We could have just gone to this.
We could, a decade or two ago, getting $700 a month plus $900 cash might have made sense for budget-minded work campers. But since inflation, rising M2 money supply, and skyrocketing housing costs have cut the dollar's buying power, the same $1,600 a monthly package needs to be more like $2,700 or $2,800 just to keep up. Otherwise, campground owners are effectively paying their workers 2003 level wages in 2025. So now how do we figure out the Social Security thing? Okay, so let's say...
Well, and that changes a lot because if you start earning too much, right, it kicks out your Social Security. So there's definitely a side to that. And that actually might be why a lot of parks still do just straight up swap their site, because they're hoping to grab those folks that are already on. That could be part of what sort of holds down the work camper wages. I never really thought about it that way, but a lot of the folks are retired. They're older, but there has been a huge influx of, especially during the pandemic, it really kicked in. And now it seems to be more common than ever, of younger people like traveling with their kids and work camping, homeschooling the kids. That's much more popular than it used to be. And those folks are going to, they need to earn a living. They don't have Social Security to worry about, and they've got extra little mouths to feed traveling with them. So
does this make sense? I'm going to put this in here and let it think. But let's say I'm not paying the cost of living, but I'm a seasonal campground open only for 6 months and accounting for attracting those short-term wages and maybe retirees and Social Security, et cetera.
Sure.
Okay. All right. We'll let that think. What are some other reasons besides pay do you think people are struggling?
I think a lot of folks really struggle with where to find them. I don't think a lot of them realize that there are social media forums where those folks gather. I don't even know about where this is funny. I'm talking about how people don't know where to look. I don't know if Work Camper News still exists as a publication. But that was, do you know, Scott? Are you familiar with them? They were a really common place that people would go. It was a magazine, and you had a job, you could put it in there, and they discussed, they'd write articles based on full-time living in your RV and working at campgrounds and what to expect and what not to expect. It was a whole publication written around this. I'm going to
Lisa's looking it up right now to see if.
Okay, I was going to say, I think Work Camper News or Work Camper Magazine, but they can be hard to find. If you're a KOA franchisee, you've got a great resource at your fingertips.
Just open your mic, Lisa, and tell us.
I see workcamper.com.
Okay, so that's probably the same.
Yeah, it's still around.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. So yeah, still around. But yeah, it's hard. Because for the same reason that we've talked about, and you're the expert here way more than I am, but for the same reason that we've talked about attention shifting from the searches to AI and to social media and to all the other places it's fragmenting in, the same thing is true of the people looking for work. They're everywhere too. And so while Work Camper News might still be popular, probably is. It's not probably popular among that younger demographic like you were talking about, or the people who haven't grown up with the site, so to speak. I don't know how other way to phrase it, but you understand what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Who aren't in the circles where it's being passed around. So it's tough. Like obviously you can't just advertise for a regular job. I mean, you could, but you're not going to spend the couple $100. Like, I mean, I spent $600 last month advertising for a new website dev on LinkedIn, right? It's expensive. Doesn't make
Yeah,
sense
and
for you to do that.
work campers are not going to LinkedIn
No.
to post their
Like
resumes. It's
Indeed or any of the, it doesn't
Yep.
make sense, I think, for you to put it there. So I don't know where you find that stuff. It's really
very niche.
interesting.
It's very niche. A lot of it is word of mouth, and the timing of it is very, like, when I became a KOA. I mean, I had used work campers before. We became a KOA in 2012. I really started to use work campers because when we transitioned to KOA, I knew I had a lot to learn. So they have an in-house like referral system, essentially, where the work campers who are experienced in the KOA realm from working at KOAs can post at the Work at a KOA website. And as an owner, I had access to that. But I can tell you this, if you don't find those people as early, some of them, I would start looking in May or June for the next year, because the best ones were already tied up.
Mhm.
And some of them are tied up 2 and 3 years out because they're so good. They have such a long, I mean, just wonderful list of referrals and skills specific to the KOA system, that you would have to try to get them a couple years out. And most people, I shouldn't say most, a lot of folks are looking now way too late. If you're in the north and you're ramping up, you're getting ready, you're going to open in mid-April or early May, you've missed the boat by almost a year. You need to be searching for those work campers basically a full year in advance to lock them up for the next season. But then the work campers do themselves a disservice too. Some of them will take a job with you. Oh, sure, Greg, I'm in. They'll sign a contract, and then 2 weeks later they get the job they really wanted at the Glacier Yellowstone, and I never hear from them again. Or it's touchy. It can be difficult working with work campers. It can also be difficult for the work campers working with park owners who don't deliver on what they're promised when they get there and the site's all mud. Because typically a work camper is pushed on the worst site in the campground, right? I don't want to give up my good site. I have to rent it and make money from it. So there's a lot of nuance to it, but the timing is another big thing for owners. If you want work campers, for this season, you probably miss them if you're in the north, but start looking for next season right now. Contact those people, see if you can get them on a contract, or at least just even get their attention.
So why, if it's so difficult to find them, do owners go down this path versus
Because
just
it's
hiring
like,
locally?
because if you get a good one, it's a total cheat code, because they understand it's very, campgrounds are pretty specific in the work they want you to do. And a lot of it's tough and a lot of it's dirty, and it's kind of hard to go. I mean, you might be able to hire some high school kids to do some dirty work, but you might lose them halfway through the summer because they're bored with it or it's too hard. Campground workers know what to expect from campgrounds. It cuts down the training time needed for an owner to onboard them, because they likely have done some of the work before. And if they've got a lot of experience, a lot of work campers were full on park managers. I had one that was so good that she trained my entire staff, including me, on how to use Campsite before KOA rolled out K2. When we joined in 2012, I went to KOAU, I learned it. I hired Carol and Don Six, and if you guys are out there, you're still two of the best work campers I've ever had in my life. I miss them both. Carol trained me and the rest of the staff on Campsite. That was invaluable. She got a raise her first week. I was like, oh, I am not paying you enough. There's no way I can afford to lose you. You get more money this week and for the rest of the summer, just on, because she saved me so much. So it can be a cheat code bringing them in.
So I thought, and I was looking this up. You don't have to share this again, Lisa, but I was looking this up. I thought we fucked up. Like, I thought I fucked up, because when we talked about the whole, like, oh, well, now they don't need to make a living wage, and now you're only paying them part time and all that kind of stuff, I thought for sure, like, I had done the calculation wrong, and this guy maybe is closer to right than I thought, and like maybe we were attacking him for no reason. Like we weren't really attacking him, right?
No.
But and so no, but we're still like then it flipped back. So the answer is still like, and if you think about it, it's true. You still should offer $2,700 to $2,800 a month for those 3 to 6 months.
Just for the 6
number
months.
is still the same.
Yep.
It's just the yearly compensation is less.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, if you can get 12 to 15 bucks an hour starting at a Home Depot or a Giant Eagle
It's more
stock,
than
that's
that
a
now,
grocery
man.
store chain near me.
A lot of places.
Right?
Yeah.
What's that?
It's more than that now. The minute, like the
In
minimum
some
wage might
places,
not
right.
be, but yeah.
If you can get that doing those things, and now you're going to ask somebody to, go out and do your courtesy patrols at midnight and make sure the park's quiet. And in that time, they're going to have to run into unruly campers, or they're going to have to plunge a toilet or do. Yeah, you're going to have a hard time attracting
the tough part
quality
about it,
work.
yeah, but the tough part about it is the inflation, like we've talked about before on this show.
Yeah.
Is the printing of money. Like if you look at like, well, $15 an hour, and this was reasonable. We were hearing these stories in the early 2020s of McDonald's and Walmart paying the $15 an hour.
Yep.
If you look at 2021 and 20, when they printed 25% more money than existed before, like they just poofed it into existence. If you raise that by 25%, that's $20 an hour. Like, so I get it. You're looking at it like from everybody else's perspective. Your perspective is the same. You also have 25% less dollar value as the campground owner.
Yes.
But you can complain about the high cost of goods, but you shouldn't be complaining about the worker demanding the $20 an hour, because that $20 is worth the same as 15 was in 2019. To them, the same purchasing power.
Yep. There you have it right there. That's in a nutshell. That's it. And I can't believe I did this, but I was paying $12 to $15 an hour to start my work campers in 2019 because I knew that it was the only way I was going to get quality ones. I wanted those really good ones. So I started looking a year or 2 years out, and I started paying that rate. And yes, my wages line definitely increased, but the service that I was able to give my guests,
mm-hmm.
and the time that I actually got to have a day off a week, which
because you could trust the people because you paid them more.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So you got to make money. I get it. Not everybody can do it. I'm certainly not saying you can. I feel like I'm wading into the hate mail arena here too with some of this, but you just have to really, really drill down on what it's worth to you and what are the other benefits. Yes, maybe that line increases, but what are you able to deliver to your customers if you've got that rock star staff? And what's it worth to you to keep them if you've got them? Because maybe you get them in, maybe they decide, okay, they're going to take a flyer on you at $11 an hour or at 900, and I'm going to win this guy over in a few weeks. He's going to see I'm worth it. And you don't offer him anything more, and he's gone around July 4th or something. Now what? Now what is that really worth to you? So there's a whole other conversation to have here, but the fact of the matter is they're tough to find, but I do really feel like a lot of it is because they're not getting what they're worth.
Yeah.
Really, I really don't think
and
so.
Like, and honestly, like, again, I'll open myself up to more hate mail. Like, good on them for knowing their worth.
Yes.
Like, sorry. Like, good on them for knowing their worth.
Absolutely.
And honestly, don't you want somebody who knows their worth to be there? Like, because they're going to care more. Generally speaking. They're exceptional.
True. Scott, you guys both have employees. Scott, do you have how many people do you have working for you?
On any given day, but 5 or 6.
Okay. All right. And do you find? I mean,
you don't know. They come in and maybe they work, maybe they don't. Or...
It's some of it's ad hoc.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. So you guys both know what it's like. I mean, you've got a staff, and we don't need to get into like other industries and what you pay and what. Clearly, I'm not asking that anyway on air, but it's every business owner's biggest struggle, because typically speaking, on that P&L, what's the fattest line? Wages, almost always, especially in a campground. but it's not necessarily the place you want to go cutting either. You want that quality help.
Yeah. I mean, there's efficiencies for sure, right? But that again, that no one on this show, I think, is ever going to argue that human touch is important. Even as I say, robotics and AI, that human touch is always going to be important, I think.
Yeah.
Unless you're specifically marketing like I'm a robotic campground, right? And that's my thing. But okay, do we have anything else that we want to talk about before we flip to the $5 trillion thing?
I don't think anything's as interesting as $5 trillion.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. So, Lisa, you want to share my screen real quick? So here's what we did. I used this deep research tool on OpenAI, and I just said, I want you to think deeply, long and hard, in great detail about how you could turn $5 into $1 trillion. But the catch is you can only do so through saving enough to purchase your own RV park or campground, and then through owning multiple RV parks or campgrounds and managing their incremental additional revenue sources. You have no constraints in your creativity and no limits on the method or tactics you can take, except nothing you do can be a crime. This should take place in 2025, current year, through any year in the future. The plan can and should include all kinds of future technology that might be available in the near or long term. Robots, AI, quantum computing, and all futuristic resources are available to you. Earth is not a constraint. Space travel will likely be a thing, and you can own RV parks or campgrounds on multiple planets, though through futuristic methods one can only dream of. No constraints, no rules, no societal norms. Figure out a way to make it happen. Futuristic investing, foreign planet stock markets, take advantage of currencies on other planets, anything in all caps. And so I had to do a couple more prompts to get it better, but I think we'll go down here. Let me know. I think I expanded it down here. Okay.
Where's the podcast soundbite?
Well, I've got some sound bites, but so this is the report. So it went out and searched the internet and got a bunch of data sources. And so this is the thing we're going to scroll through after I prompted it and got it to give me all the things. And so then I had it take it into soundbite or break it down by different data points. And we can just briefly run through that stuff. Man, that's long. Okay. Oh, we're on phase 5 now. That's longer than I thought. Okay. And then just break it down by audience. Okay. So I think this was the first one. Okay. So I think we did phase 1 and 2, and then I had it break it down more down below. So step 1 is the big idea. So turning $5 into $1 trillion, step by step, highlighting the thing to do and reason to do it, clearly documenting how each phase logically builds wealth. So step 1 is the big idea. Start with a single $5 investment in a website domain focused on camping and RV content. Reason it's the cheapest and quickest way to enter a profitable niche without needing upfront capital. Okay. So I guess you could probably buy that like a sale. GoDaddy has sales, like $1.99 a domain, something like that. Why camping and RVing? Because we told it to, probably, but low startup costs, high profit margins, 20% plus, growing interest, 60% of U.S. households now identify as campers, stable and evergreen industry. So phase 1 is $5 to $15,000 in the first year. The initial step is use your $5 to buy a domain name on discount. I actually didn't know I was going to say that. Create a simple blog using a free hosting platform or promotional first year free hosting. Extremely low cost startup, near zero overhead, minimal risk. AI-driven content creation, months 2 to 6. Generate content rapidly using free AI tools like GPT-4 Trials, Bard, or open source AI to write SEO-optimized articles about RV travel, campground reviews, and camping gear. Aim for 100 articles in 3 months. Reason is the SEO-rich, high-quality content attracts organic traffic fast, positioning your site for monetization quickly. Monetization and initial revenue, months 3 to 6. Monetize through Google AdSense and camping gear affiliate programs, Amazon associates. With around 10,000 monthly visitors, realistic with good SEO, you'll earn $150 a month by month 3, and then scale to $750 a month by month 6 as your site grows. The reason is it creates cash flow quickly and validates your model early. So I think this is reasonable. This is fair. Are we with so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So then accelerating growth and scaling revenue, months 7 to 12. Scale your content aggressively to over 300 articles. Improve affiliate content with higher value items, camping gear and RV accessories, and implement stronger SEO strategies. Monthly visitors could reach 100,000 per month by month 12, generating roughly $2,000 a month in revenue. Now you have a consistent revenue stream, proving the method and creating seed capital. 7 is the end of phase 1. After a year, reinvested profits yield around $15,000 saved, and you've transformed a trivial investment, $5, into a substantial seed fund, fully bootstrapped. Now, I feel like already we're going to lose a lot of the people who are like, get rich quick, right? If you're in this for get rich quick, like you're not going to be here long term. Like, I'm an overnight success, 16 years in the making, right? Like this takes time. You got to put your heart and mind into this stuff and plan it out. So phase 2 is $15,000 to $100,000, year 2 to 3. So acquiring your first campground, year 2 start. Use the saved $15,000 to buy a small, inexpensive piece of rural land, 2 to 5 acres, suitable for camping, ideally near popular outdoor areas, national parks, or tourist routes. Land is tangible and holds appreciable value, providing a stable investment. That's going to be hard to find something that cheap. I'm with you. You could if you looked hard enough, like in a rural area, you could. Right? Maybe it would be
Potentially, but that's a giant pitfall right there. We see people struggle with this a lot. But let's
so
for the sake of the
another
exercise,
year and you have $30,000, right? Whatever. The math
right.
is, so maybe you have to scale it higher.
But whatever you do, if you're out there listening and you want to buy land for a campground, it's just because it's rural and pretty, it doesn't work that way. You got to have people willing to come to it. So just call me before you do it. We'll have a quick conversation.
Yeah. But it does say ideally near popular outdoor areas, national parks, or tourist routes.
Yeah.
So again, this is easier, like before camping got really popular and after COVID. So develop a minimally viable campground. Spend strategically on basic infrastructure. A simple dirt road or path is $1,000. Basic solar power setup for lighting is $1,500. Portable toilets $600. Autonomous lawnmower and robotic maintenance $1,000. And basic security and automation tools, camera and AI check-in for $500. That's not like, I mean, it's going to be ugly. It's not going to be pretty, but it's
a hip camp. It's potentially a hip camp at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. The reason is keep startup costs extremely low. Tech and automation dramatically reduce ongoing labor costs, enabling unusually high margins. 200% ROI possible in the first year. Slide 10, generating initial campground revenue in year 2. Launch a campground with about 10 primitive camping sites, charging $20 a night. Average 50% occupancy, 5 sites a day, about $100 a day, $3,000 a month, or $36,000 a year. Operational expenses are minimal, $6,000 a year, leaving $30,000 in profit annually. So your revenue jumps from $2,000 a month online to $3,000 a month from physical property. This is a significant leap in business validation and capital growth. Are we with us so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
Reinvest profits into expansion. Take 80% of the profits, $24,000, plus any surplus, $2,000 left over from online income, totaling $26,000, and open your second campground. Slightly more developed, potential RV hookups or simple cabins. Now multiple income streams from 2 properties. End of phase 2. By a year 3 end, 2 campgrounds generating $100,000 annually with $70,000 in profits. Reason your small initial investment is now a stable 6-figure business. Are we together still?
Okay.
Not easy, but doable. Hard, but doable. You disagree?
I don't think it's not super realistic, but I'm curious to see where it goes.
All right. Anyway, like it's not scientific, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But still, like if you adjust these numbers a little bit and maybe extend out our timeline at the end, like this is all still theoretically doable. All right. So phase 3 is $100,000 to $10 million in years 4 to 6. Rapid expansion. I think this is where I ask it to, let me go down. I think I ask it to expand. All right. So phase 3, going from $100K to $10 million. Identify and purchase your third campground using existing profits. Introduce premium camping amenities, semi-permanent glamping structures, $5,000 each, renting at $150 a night. Autonomous cleaning robots, $3,000 each. Solar-powered automated showers at $2,500 a unit. And drone-based security patrols at $2,000 a drone. Not bad, right? Develop a mobile app leveraging AI predictive analytics with GPT-5 or similar tech by 2028 for advanced campsite management, dynamic pricing, Maximize profits by adjusting to demand and real-time customer support. Initial development cost $15,000. That's pretty fair for an app. Although you could probably do it with AI for a whole lot cheaper now. Expand aggressively. Repeat campground acquisition model by buying cheaper rural land, investing $50K each. That's more reasonable, right? For cheap rural land, $50K than 15. Again, you're still going to have to get lucky, but grow to 5 campgrounds, generating total annual revenue of approximately $500K to $750K by the end of year 5. Begin leveraging automated construction technology, robotically assembled cabins or modular tiny homes for $10K each, renting at $250 a night. Each campground is now capable of generating $250K annually. This gets easier as technology goes on. So like in the beginning, I get you. I'm with you, Greg, that's a little bit like hard, right? If not nearly impossible. So you have to adjust those numbers a little bit. But as technology increases, as robots become more available, as AI, again, lets you develop a $15,000 app, for example, for like the equivalent of $50, which I can do right now. I can give you an app, right, for $50 that's generated.
Yeah.
Then what you're going to see here becomes a whole lot more feasible. Begin leveraging automated construct. Oh, we did that already. Achieve 15 to 20 total campgrounds by year 6, each averaging profits of $200,000 annually. After automated maintenance, profits approaching $4 million a year. Do you want to do this yet, Greg?
No, I'm still out. Thank you.
Okay.
Drive through.
But you're going to make $1 trillion, man. Integrate AGI for fully autonomous campground operations, removing labor costs nearly entirely by year 6. At some point, Greg, on a show, we should talk about that crazy automated smart thing that we ran. Remember that idea that we had?
Yes.
Of not actually calling it an RV campground and reclassifying it. That would be interesting. I got to go find it. So removing labor costs entirely by year 6. AGI controls security, check-ins, guest experience, maintenance, and supply chains. This is actually feasible. If you're talking about year 6 by 2030, 2031, this is very feasible. You guys will think I'm crazy. Like, well, you know, Greg, like I've talked to you about some of this stuff, and same thing, Scott. This is for sure feasible in 6 years.
Do the listeners know what AGI is?
Artificial general intelligence, if you don't know what that is. So the definition is all over the place, but basically when AI is as smart as, or can do, I think the common, most accepted one is when AI can do the tasks of most valuable humans on Earth, is what it's called. But like by 2031, we're going to have way more than that. Market your brand aggressively using AI-driven social media advertising, self-optimizing ads targeting high-income nature-focused demographics. Budget $100K annually, returns 3 to 5x in bookings. That's fair. That's a decent ROI. Valuation hits $10 million due to stable cash flow, brand recognition, and innovative AI-driven operational efficiency by year 6. I feel like at this point, like if you were an existing campground, like multi-park place that has, like you could probably pick up here and then go if you wanted to own get to $1 trillion. I'm not saying it works for everybody. I'm not, right? But like you could. Is that fair, Greg? Like could you just cut off these phases and start here and then maybe pick up? Like I know you don't know what it's going to say.
Depending on what your earnings are. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Potentially. If you've got it all depends on what you've got to invest at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So phase 4, expanding from $10 million to $500 million. Use profits and land equity to acquire premium locations globally. New Zealand, Norway, Patagonia, Switzerland, Canada, and national parks across the U.S. Budget $500,000 per location for premium setups. Again, this is land only. You're not buying campgrounds, right? You're just buying land here is what they're talking about. Launch premium, fully automated luxury RV resorts powered by robotics. Facilities include fully robotic kitchens, autonomous vehicle charging pads, drone food delivery, self-driving RV parking assistance, and a robotic valet. I would stay there. Would you stay there?
Me?
Yeah, anybody.
It depends on where it's at. I really just want to know where you can get.
Place.
I just want to know where you've got $500,000 land for premium setups. That's pretty inexpensive, especially 7 to 10 years from now.
I mean, maybe like it depends on what kind of economy we're in, right? And how many people need to sell land. So that's fair too.
I suppose.
Again, I agree with you. The land cost is a little bit low.
They're a little low throughout this. Yeah, that's been the biggest surprise.
But you can still like take those numbers, swip them out, and like this plan still works with different numbers. It just might take longer.
Mm-hmm.
Launch a premium fully automated. Oh, we did that. Secure government subsidies for eco-friendly automated resorts. That could be interesting. Reducing setup costs by 20 to 30% per location. Establish AI-managed marketing campaigns globally, predicting seasonal demand to optimize revenue and occupancy rates. 85% plus occupancy achievable through predictive analytics. I probably agree with that. Depending on the economy and who has money to spend, which is a big unknown. Revenue per location now $2 million annually due to premium pricing, optimized occupancy, minimal labor costs, and exclusive amenities. Grow the network to 100 premium resorts by year 9. Total revenue around $200 million annually. Create a decentralized autonomous organization-based rewards program using cryptocurrency and blockchain called Camping Coin. There you go. I've actually talked about this to parks, about creating a blockchain-based reward system that incentivizes repeat bookings and community engagement, boosting loyalty dramatically. That's a whole nother conversation, but it's actually really interesting. Valuation reaches $500 million by the end of year 10 due to global presence, tech leadership, AI-driven efficiency, and strong brand power. Are we with it here before we go to space tourism? So scaling to space tourism, $500 million to $100 billion, years 11 to 15. Formulate a detailed lunar habitat concept. Fully automated robotic construction. Partner privately with SpaceX for lunar transport. No equity partnership, simple vendor-customer relationship. So you pay SpaceX to take the stuff to space, right? Invest initial $50 million into lunar habitat infrastructure. That seems reasonable, maybe. I don't know. With construction costs falling because of robots and 3D printing, that's probably reasonable. Into self-inflating modular habitats with AI-controlled climate systems, robotic 3D printing for structure building using lunar regolith. What is that? I don't even know the meaning of that word. What is that? Does anybody know?
I don't.
All right,
We'll
we'll
find
see
out.
something cool. Sell high-value pre-bookings to wealthy tourists and corporations for $20 million per seat. 10 initial seats covering $200 million in initial revenue. Funding secured up front. Leverage autonomous robots for ongoing lunar surface operations, rover transports, robotic maintenance drones, autonomous greenhouse modules for food supply. Achieve profitable lunar operation by year 13, with annual revenue exceeding $200 million from lunar tourism and corporate bookings. Expand the lunar site with luxury modules, astronomy domes, low-gravity sports areas, VR-linked lunar walks. Premium packages are $25 to $50 million per stay, booked years in advance. That's interesting. And not unheard of, depending on how niche it is, right? Not unheard of. People are, how much did they pay to go to space? It was like $200 million or something to go to space in the Blue Origin stuff? I don't remember. Anyway.
No idea.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. There you go. That's if you got to ask, you can't afford it, right? That's.
I mean, yeah. Begin replicating lunar habitat model to Mars. Initial Mars setup cost is $500 million, funded via lunar profits. Autonomous ships transporting robotically controlled 3D printing equipment, fully AI controlled. Valuation climbs exponentially to $5 billion by year 14, due to being a first mover in off-planet hospitality. Somebody is going to do this. Somebody will do this.
I see one thing in here. VR-linked lunar walks.
Yeah.
But you're already on the moon. But you're already on the moon. This is sort of like the IMAX movie at Zion that Scott was describing. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know what you don't need an IMAX for? You just go outside.
It depends on the equipment and the safety, and yeah, I mean, I don't know, like whatever.
I'm just here to punch holes in it.
All right, that's fine. That's what you're supposed to do, right? But I feel like that doesn't impact the plan if you don't have VR lunar walks. So
yeah, you just send them outside.
Martian colonization and beyond, $5 billion to $1 trillion, years 16 to 30. Fully autonomous Martian resorts established in years 16 to 18. Premium adventure tourism, selling seats at $75 million to $100 million each. AGI fully controls life support, safety, and luxury experience. Establish secondary Martian economic ecosystem by introducing Mars-specific cryptocurrency, Mars Coin. becoming the default currency for tourists and Earth-based corporations investing in the Mars economy. Begin exporting Martian mined rare minerals, fully robotic mining operations back to Earth. This is what Elon's doing, by the way. He's trying to land something on a thing and mine from an asteroid. Back to Earth, AI managed shipping logistics, adding billions annually to your revenue. Develop proprietary robotic workforce and AGI-based intellectual property, licensable robotics tech, AGI hospitality modules, autonomous habitat technology, licensed globally and off-planet, generating billions in annual royalties. Valuation rapidly reaches $50 billion by year 20 due to a monopoly on Martian tourism, mineral rights, intellectual property, and technological dominance. Are we fair with that so far? Like, if that happened, that's fair, right? No?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's likely that you'll have a monopoly on Mars tourism, but if it did happen, if you were an early enough mover, launch deep space luxury resorts in orbit around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, leveraging futuristic propulsion technology, fusion or antimatter-based drives available in the late 2030s. Resorts priced $250 million per package, booked by the ultra-wealthy global citizens. Begin asteroid mining and establish space-based economic hubs with AI-managed interplanetary crypto or currency exchange and orbital investment markets, generating trillions in trading volume annually and skimming fees from AI-managed platforms. Develop quantum computing-driven economic modeling, controlling interplanetary financial transactions. Use quantum AI predictive finance engines to dominate trading markets across planets, generating billions in daily fees. By year 25, you dominate solar system tourism, resource extraction, and financial markets through quantum AI-driven interplanetary currency exchange valuation. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Step 55 is launch interstellar luxury travel program, year 27 to 30, opening AI-managed interstellar resorts on orbiting platforms in nearby star systems, Proxima Centauri. AGI-controlled robotics maintaining fully autonomous, luxurious environment, pricing $1 billion to $10 billion per seat, targeting global elite. Establish proprietary wormhole technology, leveraging future physics breakthroughs in the late 2040s. That's not implausible, the way this is moving. Shortening interstellar travel from decades to weeks, increasing bookings dramatically. Dominate interstellar tourism and investment, holding monopolistic rights over wormhole travel, AGI robotics tech, quantum financial modeling IP, and asteroid mineral claims across multiple solar systems. By year 30, the business expands to dozens of star systems with trillions in annual economic activity, fees, royalties, and exclusive contracts. The AGI system continuously optimizes economic efficiency, outperforming any competitors through quantum-driven economic dominance. Company valuation surpasses $1 trillion, achieved through dominance in terrestrial and interplanetary tourism, robotic AI intellectual property licensing, quantum financial market control, exclusive wormhole travel patents, mineral resource rights, and interstellar real estate monopoly. There you go. Somebody is going to do that. Somebody will do that. And most people, including me, will sit here probably and not do it. But whether that's Elon or somebody like him that we haven't heard of yet, if that's Marriott, who knows, somebody is going to dominate travel that way, and they're going to make trillions of dollars in the next 30 years.
I can go back in time to an even simpler plan. December 16th, 1998. South Park aired the Gnomes episode, and if anyone remembers the Underpants Gnomes, Phase 1, you steal underpants. Phase 2 was 3 question marks. Phase 3 was profit. I think that's a much simpler and easier to follow. Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't know that it may not be as plausible as that.
Easier to follow doesn't lead to $1 trillion, man. Like, this shit takes hard work.
You don't know. Phase 2 is still 3 question marks. So you don't know what profit is. That's all I'm saying.
You also don't know that $1 trillion couldn't be worth the same $900 a month you're paying your work camper in 30 years, because we could just keep printing a fuck ton of money, and then so we don't really know, right? But that's what's so fun about this, right? Like, this is a good, somebody will do that. It'll be great to see them do it. It's not a thing that I want and am interested in doing, Probably. You never know. But it is interesting to just think about the future. Like I used to be able to see, like, and not saying I'm right, but I used to be able to extrapolate out like 10 years, 20 years. I've always considered myself, because of the crazy amount of work I do in research, in my narrow field of what I know, to be 10 or 20 steps ahead of everybody because of the work I put in. And I really believe that. It's not like you can call that egotistical, but now I can't tell you what the world's going to look like in 3 years. I don't have any clue. It is moving that fast. So who knows? Right now, this isn't feasible. The land is the biggest thing. I agree with you, right? But certainly, like, if somebody is ambitious enough to start this shit, they're not starting with $5 either.
That's right.
Right.
So
Right.
take that into
And
consideration.
once Camping Coin gets launched, we all just retire to the
That's it.
Bahamas
Game over.
somewhere.
Game over.
Yeah.
There
I
we
mean,
go.
Done.
like, really, there is a larger, like, if you guys ever, we should at some point, not saying it next week, but at some point, we should talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain and the benefits of how you could do that at your campground. We actually explored this with a park one time, because the ability to run a loyalty program through it to, like, for example, sell, I think the example we gave to them, and this is like, I don't know, 2 years ago. The example we gave to them was selling a site, or sorry, selling the right to stay one night at a site or X number of sites per year on a site at your park, and having the rights to that be on the blockchain. And what you can do through that is you can have the ability, you can give the ability for people to resell that to other people through the blockchain. The contract exists, it's unbreakable, you can always trace it. But because you originally created it, you can make the contract say every time the resale happens, you get 10%. And so you consistently make more money as the resale trades hands. It's always traceable. You always know who owns it and has the right to redeem it. Like, and that's just one example of 2,000. We could have a pretty good conversation about that shit, couldn't we?
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts, guys?
No, not really. Interesting. I always have final thoughts. I mean, you know how it goes. I'll say no, I don't have anything to say, and 10 minutes later, I'm still talking. No, good stuff. It's interesting. We're in mid-March here, camping season, peak season in the northern tiers. It's right on our doorstep.
Yeah.
Lots to consider in the next few weeks for a lot of folks, and it'd be nice to maybe talk about, in a future episode, maybe next week, about how what if you're a campground owner manager, what should you be doing right now? What should they be doing? Where should they be? And
like, what do you think that, like, how do you think that conversation, because I'm open to talking about it, but like, what do you, just slightly break it down a little bit for me.
Oh no, just like, where should you be in the planning process right now?
Oh, okay. All right.
And then let's assume that a lot of people are behind, and move on from there.
I mean, everybody is. I'm behind in my business, right? Like, you're always perpetually behind.
We all are.
Yep.
My light burned out over me today too. That's why I'm so dark and mysterious right now.
I think it suits you. Although, did you notice in the intro for the data talk, you look really skinny?
I know I did. I need to get back to that.
I mean, you're not that far off of it. Like, I don't think. Are you?
I'm retaining water.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. You should drink more whiskey. That helps.
It does. It dries you out.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good topic. Let's explore that when we have our little wrap-up meeting or whatever, and we can maybe put that on the agenda for next week.
I like it.
Greg, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really pissed at myself that I didn't know what lunar regolith is. Lunar regolith is essentially the fine, dusty particles that make up the moon's surface. And they do NASA is planning to attempt to use it with 3D printing to build structures. And it is also, I knew I had heard of it somewhere. This is where they believe they can extract oxygen from in order to, fill these lunar habitats with oxygen for us to breathe. They believe they can get it from the regolith. And also use it.
This is what I'm talking about, though. Like, this shit exists out there, guys. Like, you think this is all made up, fancy, like 3D printing isn't a thing yet in the How are we going to get oxygen?
I
Like
know nobody
next
said
part?
3D printing wasn't a thing. Now give Scott and I a
Well,
little credit.
okay,
We
but like 3D printing on whatever you just said, 3D printing from the molecules on the moon, right?
yes, from
What
the
I mean.
lunar regolith.
Like all of this stuff is very fucking feasible. Like people
I
are
thought it was-
actively working on this. Like
I
super
honestly,
smart people.
I thought it was like a punk band. I didn't know what it was. It's
Lunar regolith?
now
Okay,
on
finish your
stage
thought.
3,
Sorry, I
lunar
interrupted
regolith. That's it. It sounds to me like a punk band. Now on stage 3, lunar regolith, followed by Weezer. Like that. I don't know. That's
I
just
like
what it
it.
sounded
Like
like to
maybe
me.
if it's a heavy metal band, right? It's like a Megadeth, like a regolith.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, I like that.
Okay, finish your thought. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that I have no thoughts. That's it. That's the end of my thoughts. I'm out of them.
I have one more question for you
30 seconds,
before we
shut
go
down.
briefly, Scott. When do you think we will know how this year is going? How long is it going to take for us to get the data? Is it April? Is it May?
I think I'm actually going to push it out just slightly further. I'm going to say June, early June, because I do feel like a lot of people are going to wait and see. They're going to take the next few weeks, take a wait and see approach.
At some point, I think then in April or May, we should have a show about like how it looks now.
Yep.
And whether we think that owners should, like at what point you should start to be concerned. I want to use the P word, right? But
No,
Okay.
yeah, I like that. Yep.
cool, guys. Well, thank you for another good show. Appreciate it. It's a great conversation. I think we did a lot of good stuff, right? We had our fun with the $1 trillion. We talked about the macro and micro, and we talked about the work campers and some other things. So I think that format worked pretty good of you guys kind of sharing that email thread and going back and forth and piping in, and it gives us a different kind of set of really good topics to talk about every week. So until next time, gentlemen, have a good night.
Peace out.
You guys. Bye-bye.